Dad! The word cracked from my throat like glass hitting concrete. In 26 years, I had never seen my father cry. Julian Blackwood didn't cry. He crushed companies before breakfast, dissolved partnerships with a signature, and built empires while lesser men begged for scraps. But there he was, his massive frame shaking as he sobbed into the shoulder of our housekeeper, Sophia Santos. My designer overnight bag slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the marble floor of our Connecticut estate with a sound that might as well have been a gunshot. Both figures on the leather sofa froze. Sophia's dark eyes met mine over my father's silver head, and something passed between us, a recognition that felt like falling off a cliff. Sebastian. Her voice carried an accent I'd never noticed in 15 years of her working in our house. You weren't supposed to return until... Until when? The words erupted from somewhere deep in my chest, somewhere that had been slowly rotting since I'd walked through that door 30 seconds ago. Until you finished destroying what's left of my father. Dad finally lifted his head, and the man who stared back at me was a stranger. His steel-gray eyes, usually sharp enough to cut through titanium, were red-rimmed and hollow. The commanding presence that had dominated boardrooms and bent senators to his will had simply evaporated. Son, you don't understand. I understand plenty. I was backing toward the door, my mind racing through every interaction I'd witnessed between them over the years. The way she always seemed to know exactly where he was. How she never took vacations. The small conversations that stopped whenever I entered a room. How long has this been going on? How long have you been? 43 years. Sophia's words hit me like a physical blow. She stood slowly, her movements carrying a grace that seemed too refined for someone who'd spent decades scrubbing floors and folding laundry. When she faced me fully, something in her posture had changed. The subservience was gone, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to authority. Sebastian, sit down. I'd heard that tone exactly once before, from my father when he'd caught me stealing from his safe at 16. It was the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed. But Sophia Santos was our housekeeper. She made beds and prepared meals and disappeared into the background of our lives like human wallpaper. Except now she was looking at me like she had every right to command me in my own home. Who are you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. My father's broken laugh filled the silence. That's what I've been trying to figure out for 4 decades, son. Sophia moved to the window overlooking our grounds, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. My name isn't Sophia Santos. I haven't been a housekeeper for a single day of my life. She turned back to us, and her face had transformed into something almost regal. My real name is Sofia Vasquez, and your father has been keeping me prisoner in this house since 1981. The world tilted sideways. That's impossible. You choose to work here. You live in the staff quarters because I have no choice. Her voice carried 40 years of buried fury. Because your father made sure I could never leave. Because the moment I try to walk out those gates, I'll be arrested for a murder I didn't commit. My father's hands were shaking as he reached for his whiskey glass. Sophia, please. Not like this. Not like what, Julian? She whirled on him, and I saw something in her face that made my blood freeze. Love. Desperate, tragic, undeniable love. Not by telling your son that his entire life has been built on a lie. That every dollar in his trust fund is blood money. That the woman who raised him while you built your empire is actually... Stop. Dad's voice cracked like a whip, but Sophia ignored him. I'm his mother, Sebastian. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. I felt my knees buckle, felt the room spinning around me as if gravity had suddenly reversed itself. That's impossible, I whispered. My mother died in childbirth. You told me she died in childbirth. Sophia's laugh was bitter as winter rain. Your mother is standing right in front of you. And she's been watching you grow up from the shadows while your father convinced the world she was dead. Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. Dad stood abruptly, his face cycling through emotions I'd never seen him display. You don't understand the circumstances. The circumstances. Sophia's voice rose to something approaching a scream. The circumstances that made you fake my death. The circumstances that made you steal our son and raise him to believe his mother was a ghost. I was drowning. Drowning in a room full of air, in a house I'd called home for 26 years, in a life that was apparently built on lies so fundamental that every memory I had was suspect. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Sophia turned to me, and for the first time since I'd walked into this nightmare, her expression softened. Because, M.I. Amor, sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to let them believe you're dead. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something that made my father stumble backward as if she'd drawn a gun. It was a photograph, old, faded, but unmistakably real. In it, a younger version of my father stood beside a woman in a wedding dress. The woman had Sophia's eyes, Sophia's smile, Sophia's face. Your father and I were married in 1980, she said quietly. And 6 months later, someone tried very hard to make sure that marriage, and I, disappeared forever. The photograph fluttered from my nerveless fingers as the truth hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. This wasn't just about an affair or a family secret. This was about murder. The photograph lay on the Persian rug like evidence at a crime scene. I stared at it, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. The woman in the wedding dress wasn't just someone who looked like Sophia. It was Sophia, 24 years younger, radiant with happiness as she gazed up at my father. This can't be real. I picked up the photo with trembling hands. You're saying you've been my mother this entire time? That you've been cleaning my room, making my meals, listening to me talk about girls and college and... My voice broke. How could you just watch? How could you let me grow up thinking you were dead? Sophia sank back onto the sofa, suddenly looking every one of her 63 years. Because the alternative was watching you grow up dead. Explain. The word came out harder than I intended, but I was drowning in questions and rage and a grief I couldn't even name. Dad moved to his desk, his hands shaking as he poured another whiskey. In the 15 years since my supposed mother's death, I'd never seen him drink before sunset. Your mother was Sofia Vasquez then, daughter of Miguel Vasquez. The name hit me like ice water. Miguel Vasquez, the cartel leader who'd controlled half the drug trade between Mexico and Texas until he'd mysteriously disappeared in 1981. Every true crime documentary, every news special about the cocaine wars of the 80s mentioned his name. No, I backed away from both of them. No, that's impossible. We don't. Your grandfather was the most dangerous man in North America, Sophia said quietly. And your father was trying to destroy him. The room spun again. What? Dad's laugh was hollow. I wasn't always Julian Blackwood, billionaire philanthropist. In 1980, I was DEA agent Julian Blake, deep undercover in the Vasquez organization. My mission was to get close to Miguel, gather intelligence, and bring down his entire operation. And instead, you fell in love with his daughter. The pieces were clicking together, each one more devastating than the last. She saved my life. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. 3 times. Even after she discovered I was federal law enforcement, she chose to protect me instead of her own father. Sophia's eyes were distant, lost in memory. I'd watched my father destroy everything he touched for 22 years. When I met your father, he was the first person who ever looked at me and saw something other than Miguel Vasquez's legacy. So you betrayed your own family. I couldn't keep the accusation out of my voice. I chose love over blood. Sophia met my gaze steadily. The same choice your father made when he decided to fake my death instead of letting the DEA use me as bait. Fake your death. I was spiraling now, each revelation pulling me deeper into a story that couldn't possibly be my life. Dad set his glass down with deliberate care. The operation went sideways in February 1981. Miguel discovered who I really was, and he knew Sophia had been helping me. He put a contract on both our heads, but the DEA wanted to use her as leverage, keep her alive long enough to flush out his entire network. They wanted to use me as bait, Sophia continued. Dangle Miguel's pregnant daughter in front of him until he made a mistake they could exploit. Pregnant. The word hit me like a physical blow. You were pregnant with me. 7 months. Sophia's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. And your father knew that if the DEA got their way, you'd either be born in federal custody or not at all. I couldn't breathe. So you decided to disappear. Julian had contacts, people who owed him favors, people who could make documents disappear and create new ones. Sophia's voice was getting stronger, as if telling this story was somehow healing her. We staged my death in a car explosion near the Mexican border. Closed casket funeral, everything. But Miguel knew better, Dad continued. He knew Sophia was too smart to die in a car accident. He spent years hunting for us, for you. So we had to be careful. I took the Blackwood name, my grandmother's maiden name, and built a legitimate business to wash the DEA payouts and protection money. Sophia became Sophia Santos, a housekeeper with perfect references and no family. And I grew up believing my mother was dead. Betrayal was starting to crystallize now, sharp and cold in my chest. You grew up safe, Sophia said fiercely. Do you understand what Miguel would have done if he'd found us? What he would have done to you? I don't care. The words exploded out of me. You let me grieve for a mother who was making my breakfast every morning. You let me feel like an orphan when you were right there. Sebastian. No. I was pacing now, my hands running through my hair. Do you know how many nights I lay awake wondering what she would have thought of me? How many times I wished I could talk to her, just once. And you were there. You were always there, and you said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then Sophia stood, moving toward me with the hesitant grace of someone approaching a wounded animal. You want to know what your mother would have thought of you. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of 26 years of suppressed love. She would have thought you were perfect. She would have been proud of your kindness, even when you didn't know she was watching. She would have laughed at your terrible jokes and worried when you stayed out too late and held her breath every time you took risks. Tears were streaming down her face now. She would have told you that the way you helped Mrs. Patterson next door with her groceries every week proved you had her heart. She would have bragged to everyone who'd listen about your art scholarship, even though you chose business instead. She would have loved you so much it hurt, Sebastian, because she did. Every single day. I felt something crack open in my chest, not breaking, but expanding, like a door that had been locked for decades suddenly swinging wide. You watched me help Mrs. Patterson. I watched everything. Sophia's smile was tremulous. I memoized everything. Every scraped knee, every small victory, every moment of joy or sadness. I couldn't be your mother, so I became your guardian angel instead. For a moment, I almost forgot to be angry. Almost let myself fall into the embrace of someone who'd loved me from the shadows for my entire life. Then my phone buzzed. The text was from Adrian Hales, my father's chief legal counsel and my godfather. The man who'd helped raise me after my mother's supposed death. Sebastian, we need to talk. Now. It's about your father and Sophia. Come to my office immediately. Tell no one you're coming. Trust me. The message was followed by another that made my blood freeze. Your life depends on it. I looked up to find both Sophia and my father watching me with expressions I couldn't read. Who was that? Dad asked. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, my mind racing. Adrian had been Dad's best friend for over 20 years. He'd been at every birthday party, every graduation, every major moment of my life. If anyone would know the truth about Sophia, about the lies our family had been built on, it would be him. Nobody important. I lied, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Just a friend from the city. But as I looked at Sophia and my father, two people who'd spent decades lying to me, even if their motives were pure, I realized I didn't know who to trust anymore. And the text from Adrian suggested that maybe, just maybe, there were still secrets in this house that could get me killed. I need some air, I said, moving toward the door. It's a lot to process. Sebastian, wait, Sophia started to follow me. Please. I held up a hand, not trusting myself to look at her. Just give me some time to think. As I walked out of the library, I could feel their eyes on my back. But all I could think about was Adrian's message, and the terrible possibility that the people who'd just confessed to loving me enough to destroy their lives might still be lying about something that could destroy mine. The marble floor felt different under my feet now, less like home, more like a stage where I'd been unknowingly performing the wrong play for 26 years. And somewhere in the shadows of this house that had hidden so many secrets, someone else was watching. Someone who knew exactly which strings to pull to make my world collapse completely. I drove to Adrian's office in downtown Hartford with my hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. The 40-minute drive gave me too much time to think, too much time for my mind to spiral through 26 years of memories, searching for clues I'd missed. Adrian Hales and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower that reflected the late afternoon sun like a beacon. I'd been here countless times, birthday celebrations when Adrian would sneak me into his office to show off his latest case victories, graduation parties where he'd boast about my achievements to his colleagues, quiet conversations when I'd needed advice about my future that my emotionally distant father couldn't provide. But as I rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, everything felt different. The familiar burgundy carpets and mahogany paneling that had once felt welcoming now seemed oppressive, like the walls of a very expensive prison. Sebastian Blackwood to see Mr. Webb, I told the receptionist, a young woman I'd never seen before. Of course, Mr. Blackwood. He's waiting for you in conference room A. She gestured toward the hallway with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Down the hall, last door on your right. Conference room A was Adrian's private sanctuary, soundproof, windowless, and equipped with technology that could detect electronic surveillance. He only used it for his most sensitive cases, the ones involving clients who had enemies powerful enough to kill. Adrian was standing with his back to the door when I entered, staring at a wall covered with photographs, documents, and what looked like a timeline spanning 40 years. When he turned, his usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his silver hair mussed, his tie loose, his eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd been awake for days. Jesus, Sebastian. Thank God you came. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled me into a hug that felt more like relief than greeting. Are you all right? Did they hurt you? Hurt me? I stepped back, confused. Adrian, what's going on? Your text said. I know what my text said. He moved to the door and engaged 3 separate locks I'd never noticed before. We need to move fast. They'll realize you're here soon enough. Who will realize I'm here? Adrian gestured to the wall behind him, and I finally focused on what he'd been staring at. It was a massive conspiracy board, photographs connected by red string, newspaper clippings, legal documents, and surveillance photos spanning decades. At the center was a picture of my father as a young man, but he wasn't alone. He was standing next to a woman who looked exactly like Sophia, and across from them stood Adrian himself, looking barely 30 years old. You were there, I whispered, moving closer to the wall. You were there when they met. I was Julian's handler, Adrian said quietly. DEA agent Adrian Hales, assigned to Operation Crossroads, the mission to bring down Miguel Vasquez and his entire network. The room tilted. Your DEA? Was. I retired the day your parents disappeared. He pointed to a section of the wall covered in death certificates, newspaper obituaries, and crime scene photos. This is what the official record shows. Sofia Vasquez died in a car explosion on February 15, 1981. Julian Blake, undercover DEA agent, was killed in a shootout with cartel members 3 days later. But that's not what happened. No. What happened was that I realized our operation had been compromised from the beginning. Someone inside the DEA was feeding information to Miguel Vasquez. Someone wanted your parents dead for reasons that had nothing to do with bringing down a drug cartel. I stared at the wall, my eyes catching on a section I hadn't noticed before. Recent photographs, taken with telephoto lenses, showing Sophia in the garden of our estate, my father in his office, me at various locations around the city. All dated within the last 6 months. Someone's been watching us. For 43 years. Adrian moved to his desk and pulled out a file thick enough to choke a horse. Sebastian, your family isn't just hiding from Miguel Vasquez. You're hiding from people who make Miguel look like a choir boy. I don't understand. Your father discovered something during his time undercover. Something that connected Miguel's cartel to a network of politicians, judges, and federal agents who were using the drug trade to fund off-the-books operations. Black ops stuff. Regime changes, assassinations, the kind of shadow government conspiracy that sounds like fiction until you're staring at the evidence. He opened the file, revealing documents stamped with official seals, bank transfer records, and communications between government officials and known cartel members. When Julian tried to bring this to his superiors, he discovered that his own handler, a man named Director James Blackthorne, was part of the network. Blackthorne wasn't just protecting the cartel, he was using it. So you helped them disappear. I saved their lives. Adrian's voice was fierce. Blackthorne put kill orders on both of them. The car explosion that supposedly killed Sophia? That was meant to be real. The shootout that supposedly killed Julian? Those were Blackthorne's people, not cartel members. I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. But if Blackthorne wanted them dead 40 years ago, why are you worried now? Isn't he dead? We thought so. Director Blackthorne supposedly died of a heart attack in 1995. Adrian pulled out another photograph, a recent surveillance shot of a man in his 70s stepping out of a black sedan. Despite the age and silver hair, the face was unmistakable from the younger photos on the wall. This was taken outside your father's office building 3 weeks ago. The blood drained from my face. That's impossible. Blackthorn faked his own death, just like your parents did. But he's been using those 14 years to consolidate power, eliminate loose ends, and prepare for what he calls the final solution to the Blackwood problem. Which is? Adrian met my eyes, and I saw something in them that terrified me more than anything else I'd learned today. Pity. You, Sebastian. You're the final loose end. Before I could respond, the conference room door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear burst through, weapons drawn, moving with the precision of a military unit. But these weren't police or federal agents. Their equipment was too advanced, their movements too coordinated. Adrian Hales, the lead man said, his voice muffled by a tactical mask. By order of Director Blackthorn, you're under arrest for conspiracy, treason, and harboring federal fugitives. Run, Sebastian. Adrian lunged toward his desk, his hand reaching for something I couldn't see. The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. Adrian stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. The boy comes with us, the leader said calmly. Director Blackthorn is very eager to meet Sofia Vasquez's son. I was frozen, my mind struggling to process the violence, the implications, the terrible understanding that everything I'd learned in the last 4 hours was just the beginning. Sebastian, Adrian gasped, pressing something into my hand as he fell. Conference room C. Behind the law books. Everything you need to know, everything your parents never told you. The object in my palm was a small key, warm from Adrian's blood. Move, one of the tactical officers ordered, gesturing toward the door with his weapon. As they escorted me from the room, I caught a glimpse of the conspiracy wall over my shoulder. In the chaos, I'd missed one crucial section, a collection of birth certificates, DNA tests, and legal documents all bearing my name. But according to the paperwork scattered across Adrian's desk, Sebastian Blackwood wasn't just the son of Sofia Vasquez and Julian Blake. According to the DNA analysis dated 3 weeks ago, I was also the biological grandson of Director James Blackthorn. The man who'd spent 40 years trying to kill my parents wasn't just a corrupt federal agent seeking to tie up loose ends. He was my grandfather. And judging by the family photographs scattered among the surveillance shots, he'd been looking for his long-lost grandson for a very long time. As they forced me into the elevator, one thought cut through my terror with crystal clarity. Sofia and my father hadn't just been hiding from a corrupt DA director. They'd been hiding from family. The black SUV that transported me from Adrian's office had no handles on the inside of the rear doors. I'd discovered that fact within the first 30 seconds of what I was beginning to understand was not an arrest, but a kidnapping. The windows were tinted so dark that I couldn't see where we were going, but the drive took exactly 4 to 7 minutes, long enough for my mind to cycle through every terrible possibility of what Director Blackthorn wanted with his long-lost grandson. When we finally stopped, I was escorted through what appeared to be a private airport hangar. The space was vast and clinical, filled with unmarked aircraft and vehicles that screamed government black ops. But it was the woman waiting beside a sleek private jet who made my breath catch in my throat. She was maybe 25, with auburn hair pulled back in a severe ponytail and green eyes that missed nothing. Her clothing was tactical but fitted, someone who could blend into a boardroom or a battlefield with equal ease. But it was the way she moved that captured my attention, a fluid grace that suggested years of training in things that weren't taught in business school. Sebastian Blackwood, she said as my escorts approached. Her voice carried a slight accent I couldn't place, Irish, maybe, or something Eastern European. I'm Agent Aria Torres. I'll be handling your transport. Transport to where? She smiled, and the expression transformed her face from coldly professional to something almost warm. Director Blackthorn's private facility. He's very excited to meet you properly. Properly? Oh, you've met before. Many times. Agent Torres gestured toward the jet. You just don't remember. The aircraft's interior was more luxury yacht than government transport. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents, and technology that looked decades ahead of anything commercially available. Agent Torres settled into the seat across from me as the engine spun up, her movements casual but alert. You're not what I expected, she said, studying my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. What did you expect? More of your grandfather, I suppose. Director Blackthorn has been vocal about his expectations for this reunion. He's not my grandfather. The words came out more forcefully than I'd intended. Whatever Adrian showed me in those documents, there has to be some mistake. Agent Torres pulled out a tablet and swiped through several screens before turning it toward me. The display showed a DNA comparison chart, my genetic profile alongside two others labeled Subject A and Subject B. Subject A is Sofia Vasquez, collected from a coffee cup she used 3 weeks ago. Subject B is Director Blackthorne, from medical records dating back to his military service. She pointed to the highlighted sections. The match is definitive, Sebastian. Blackthorne is your maternal grandfather. The cabin felt like it was shrinking. That's impossible. Sofia's father was Miguel Vasquez. Sofia's mother was Blackthorne's daughter. Agent Torres's voice was gentle, as if she was delivering news of a death rather than revealing a family connection. Catherine Blackthorne married Miguel Vasquez in 1957 as part of a deep-cover operation. She was supposed to gather intelligence on cartel operations for 1 year. Instead, she fell in love, had a daughter, and disappeared into Mexico for good. I stared at the genetic evidence, my mind racing. So Blackthorne wasn't trying to destroy Miguel's cartel. He was trying to get his daughter back. And when Catherine died in 1978, Sofia became his only remaining family. Agent Torres put the tablet away. By then, Sofia was already involved with your father. Blackthorne saw an opportunity to use the DEA operation to bring his granddaughter home. But Sofia chose my father over her grandfather. A choice that Blackthorne has regretted allowing her to make for 43 years. The jet banked sharply, and through the window I caught a glimpse of a sprawling complex nestled in what looked like the Montana wilderness, concrete and steel buildings surrounded by forest and mountains. It looked more like a fortress than a government facility. Agent Torres, I said as we began our descent. Can I ask you something? Of course. Whose side are you on? Her green eyes studied me for a long moment. That's a more complicated question than you might think. 20 minutes later, I was walking through corridors that felt like a cross between a luxury hotel and a maximum security prison. Agent Torres led me past doors marked with numbers instead of names, past windows that showed training facilities and shooting ranges, past rooms filled with technology that wouldn't look out of place on a space station. How long have you worked for Blackthorne? I asked as we waited for an elevator. Since I was 18. There was something in her voice, not quite sadness, but a kind of resigned acceptance. He recruited me from a very dark place, gave me purpose, direction, a chance to use my skills for something meaningful. What kind of skills? She smiled, and this time the expression had an edge to it. The kind that keep people like your parents hidden for 40 years. The kind that could get you out of here if you needed them to. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, but I didn't move. Are you offering to help me escape? I'm offering to help you understand what you're really walking into. Agent Torres stepped into the elevator and held the door. Your grandfather isn't the monster your parents made him out to be, Sebastian. But he's not entirely innocent either. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in between. The elevator rose smoothly, carrying us toward what I was beginning to suspect might be the most important conversation of my life. But as the floors ticked by, I found myself thinking less about Blackthorne and more about the woman beside me. There was something about Agent Torres that felt familiar, as if I'd seen her before but couldn't place where. Have we met? I asked suddenly. She was quiet for so long that I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, I've been watching you for 3 years, Sebastian. From a distance, but watching. Making sure you were safe, that Blackthorne's enthusiasm for family reunions didn't put you in danger. You've been protecting me. I've been protecting your parents. Blackthorne's orders. The elevator stopped, and she stepped out into a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Montana wilderness. But somewhere along the way, I started protecting you for my own reasons. Before I could ask what she meant, she stopped in front of a set of double doors marked Director in brass lettering. Sebastian, she said, her hand on the door handle. Whatever he tells you in there, whatever evidence he shows you, whatever promises he makes, remember that your parents spent 40 years running from him for a reason. What reason? Because James Blackthorne doesn't just want his family back. He wants to own them. She opened the door. And he's very, very good at making people believe that being owned is the same thing as being loved. The office beyond was massive, with windows on 3 sides offering panoramic views of the mountains. But it was the man behind the mahogany desk who commanded attention, tall, silver-haired, with Sofia's eyes and a presence that filled the room like smoke. Director James Blackthorne stood as I entered, and his smile was everything I'd expected and feared. Warm, paternal, and absolutely predatory. Sebastian, he said, his voice carrying 40 years of longing and satisfaction. My boy. Welcome home. Behind me, I heard Agent Torres close the door with a soft click that sounded like a prison cell locking. Grandfather, I said, the word feeling like poison on my tongue. Please, sit. Blackthorne gestured to a chair positioned directly across from his desk. We have so much to discuss. So many years to catch up on. His eyes moved past me to Agent Torres. Thank you, Arya. That will be all. Actually, Agent Torres said, and there was something new in her voice, a steel that hadn't been there before. I think I'll stay. Blackthorne's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in his eyes. I wasn't making a request. Neither was I. The tension in the room ratcheted up several degrees. I looked between them, sensing undercurrents I didn't understand but instinctively feared. Very well, Blackthorne said finally. Family business should be witnessed, I suppose. He pressed a button on his desk, and the windows around us went opaque, blocking out the mountain views and trapping us in artificial light. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder that he placed carefully on the desk between us. Sebastian, I want to show you something that will change how you see everything you think you know about your parents. His fingers drummed against the folder. But first, I need you to understand that everything I'm about to tell you comes from a place of love. Agent Torres moved closer to my chair, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, something subtle and expensive that didn't match her tactical appearance. Director, she said quietly. Perhaps we should. Arya. Blackthorne's voice cut through hers like a blade. I believe I gave you an order. You gave me many orders over the years, James. I've decided to stop following the ones that require me to lie to people I care about. The way she said my name, the familiarity, the protection, the hint of something deeper, made me look at her with new eyes. Agent Torres wasn't just Blackthorne's operative assigned to watch me. She was someone who'd started this mission professionally and somewhere along the way had made it personal. Blackthorne opened the folder, revealing photographs that made my stomach turn. Crime scene photos, autopsy reports, surveillance images of violence that looked like something out of a war zone. Your parents, he said quietly, are not the victims they've pretended to be for 40 years. They are killers, Sebastian. And the people they've killed include my daughter, your grandmother Catherine, and 17 federal agents who got too close to the truth. The photographs blurred in front of me. That's impossible. Is it? Blackthorne pulled out a specific image, a surveillance photo of my father and Sophia standing over what appeared to be a mass grave. This was taken in 1983, 2 years after their supposed deaths. They were eliminating witnesses to their escape, people who'd helped them disappear. Agent Torres's hand touched my shoulder, and I could feel her tension. James, those photographs are authentic, verified, unalterable evidence that Sofia Vasquez and Julian Blake have spent 40 years building their fortune on the bodies of good people who trusted them. The room was spinning. Everything I thought I'd learned about my parents, their love story, their sacrifice, their protection of me, was being rewritten in blood. Why are you showing me this? I whispered. Blackthorne leaned forward, his eyes intense. Because I want you to come home, Sebastian. I want you to take your rightful place in this family. Help me build something that will outlast all of us. But I can't do that while you're still loyal to people who've lied to you your entire life. And if I don't believe you? Blackthorne's smile widened. Then we'll have to discuss the safety of Sophia and Julian. You see, my boy, they are no longer hidden. As of 2 hours ago, my people have surrounded your family estate. Your parents are trapped, and their survival depends entirely on the choices you make in the next few minutes. My blood turned to ice. You're using me to get to them. I'm giving you a chance to save them. Blackthorne stood, moving around the desk to place a paternal hand on my shoulder. All you have to do is acknowledge the truth about who they really are, and agree to help me bring them to justice. Do that, and they'll live out their days in comfortable captivity. Refuse. He let the threat hang in the air. Agent Torres stepped forward. There's something else you should know, Sebastian. Blackthorne's hand tightened on my shoulder. Arya, I'm warning you. The photographs are real, she continued, ignoring him. But they are not what Blackthorne is claiming. Your parents weren't eliminating witnesses. They were eliminating Blackthorne's people, operatives who'd been sent to kill them and anyone who'd helped them escape. Arya, Blackthorne's voice was deadly quiet. You're making a very serious mistake. The only mistake I made was believing you when you said you wanted to protect Sophia's son. Agent Torres moved between Blackthorne and me, her body language shifting into something combative. You don't want to protect Sebastian. You want to use him as bait to draw his parents out of hiding. Blackthorn's paternal facade cracked, revealing something much darker underneath. And what exactly do you plan to do about it? Agent Torres smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, the expression was genuinely warm. I plan to get him out of here. Before Blackthorn could respond, every light in the office went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the room in red, and through the darkness I heard Agent Torres's voice, calm and professional. Sebastian, when I say run, you run. Don't look back, don't hesitate, and don't trust anyone who isn't me. Blackthorn was shouting orders into a communication device, but his words were lost in the wail of alarms that had suddenly filled the building. What's happening? I asked. Agent Torres pressed something into my hand. Small, hard, electronic. Your parents just declared war on their father-in-law. And we're right in the middle of the battlefield. Through the opaque windows, I could see flashes of light that looked suspiciously like explosions. Run, Agent Torres said. And this time, I didn't hesitate. The facility's corridors were a maze of red emergency lighting and echoing alarms. Agent Torres moved through them like she'd memorized every turn, every exit, every potential ambush point. Which, I was beginning to realize, she probably had. This way, she whispered, pulling me down a stairwell that seemed to descend into the mountain itself. There's a service tunnel that leads to the motor pool. If we can reach it. Another explosion rocked the building, close enough that dust rained from the ceiling. Through the emergency lighting, I could see Torres's face clearly for the first time since the lights went out, and what I saw there made me stop running. She wasn't afraid. Despite the chaos, despite the apparent assault on the facility, despite helping me escape from one of the most dangerous men alive, Aria Torres looked relieved. You knew this was going to happen, I said. She turned back to me, and in the red light her green eyes looked almost black. Sebastian, we need to keep moving. No. I pressed myself against the stairwell wall. You knew my parents were going to attack this place. You've been in contact with them. For a moment, the only sound was the distant wail of alarms. Then Torres sighed, and her shoulders sagged in a way that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Yes, she said quietly. I've been in contact with Sophia and Julian for 6 months. 6 months? My mind raced backward. Since the surveillance started. Since Blackthorn found them again. I was the one who warned them. Torres sat down on the stairs, suddenly looking exhausted. Blackthorn was planning something called Operation Family Reunion. He was going to take you first, use you as leverage to force your parents into the open. Then he was going to stage a scenario where they appeared to be attacking innocent people, justifying their elimination. But instead, you helped them plan a real attack. I helped them plan a rescue. Torres looked up at me, and her expression was desperate. Sebastian, your parents aren't attacking this facility. They're here to get you out. Another explosion, closer this time. Through the stairwell's emergency door, I could hear gunfire and shouting. How long have you been working against Blackthorn? 3 years. Torres stood, and I could see her making some kind of internal decision. Since the day I realized what he was really planning to do with his long-lost family. Which was create the perfect intelligence dynasty. Sophia would run Central American operations, using her cartel connections. Julian would handle domestic surveillance, using his business networks. And you. She met my eyes. You would be groomed to take over everything when Blackthorn finally died. The stairwell felt like it was closing in around me. A family business built on murder and espionage. Blackthorn doesn't see it that way. To him, we're patriots. Protectors. People willing to do the dirty work that keeps America safe. Torres started moving down the stairs again, but slower now. He recruited me the same way he planned to recruit you, by rescuing me from a terrible situation and making me believe I owed him everything. What situation? My parents were killed in a car accident when I was 17. At least, that's what the police report said. Her voice was bitter. What actually happened was that my father discovered some financial irregularities in the defense contract he was auditing. Blackthorn had my parents eliminated and then swooped in to adopt their traumatized daughter. I felt sick. He's been building a family of operatives. For 40 years. Every person in this facility owes Blackthorn their life, their identity, or their freedom. He collects broken people and rebuilds them in his image. Torres stopped at a heavy metal door marked Sublevel 3. But you were supposed to be different. You were blood. Past tense. She pulled out an electronic key card and swiped it through the door's scanner. Blackthorn's plans changed when he realized you weren't going to come willingly. When I reported that you were genuinely happy with your life, that you loved your parents despite learning the truth about them. The door opened onto another corridor, but this one was different, older, carved directly into the mountain rock. The emergency lighting here was sporadic, creating pools of red illumination separated by stretches of darkness. "Arya," I said as we entered the tunnel. "Why are you helping me?" She was quiet for so long that I thought she wasn't going to answer. We walked through 3 pools of light before she spoke. "Because somewhere along the way, watching you became more than just an assignment." Her voice was barely audible over the distant sounds of battle. "You were kind to people who couldn't do anything for you. You helped strangers without expecting recognition. You were everything Blackthorn said was weak about modern society, and watching you proved him wrong. You fell in love with a surveillance target. I fell in love with the idea that people could be good without being broken first." Torres stopped walking and turned to face me. "Sebastian, there's something else you need to know. Something that changes everything." The way she said it made my stomach drop. "What? The attack happening right now? It's not your parents." The tunnel seemed to stretch into infinity around us. "What do you mean?" "Blackthorn is staging the entire thing. The explosions, the gunfire, the assault on the facility, it's all theater. Designed to make you believe your parents are violent criminals who would endanger innocent people to get to you." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "But you said." "I said a lot of things." Torres's voice was breaking. "I said them because Blackthorn told me to say them. Because the only way to save your life was to make you trust me completely." The red emergency lighting flickered, casting shifting shadows across her face. In those shadows, I could see something that made my blood freeze. Family resemblance. "You're his daughter," I whispered. "Arya Blackthorn Torres. Adopted at 17, trained from 18, and assigned to watch over my dear cousin from 22. Her smile was heartbreaking. Blackthorn didn't just want his granddaughter back, Sebastian. He wanted his entire family under one roof. This is all a lie. The escape, the tunnel, you helping me. The escape is real. The tunnel leads to freedom. And my help." She reached out to touch my face, and her hand was trembling. "My help is the one true thing in a lifetime of lies." "But you just said Blackthorn planned all of this." "Blackthorn planned for me to gain your trust and then deliver you to a staging area where he could demonstrate your parents' violence and convince you to join his cause." Torres pulled out her weapon, not to threaten me, but to check its ammunition. What he didn't plan for was his broken adopted daughter falling in love with the target. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from both directions of the tunnel. We were trapped. "Arya," I said urgently. "If this is all theater, where are my real parents?" "Safe. Hidden. Blackthorn doesn't actually know where they are, yet." She positioned herself between me and the approaching sounds. "But if he gets his hands on you, if he can convince you that they are monsters, he won't need to find them. They'll come to him." "So what do we do?" Torres smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, the expression was completely genuine. "We improvise." The footsteps were getting closer, boots on stone, moving with military precision from both directions. "Sebastian," Torres said, pressing something into my hands. It was a small device that looked like a modified cell phone. "This has a direct encrypted connection to your parents. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, whatever you see, whatever Blackthorn shows you, press the red button and talk to them directly." "What about you?" "I'm going to buy you time to get out of here." She checked her weapon again. "There's a maintenance shaft about 50 yards down the tunnel. It leads to the surface, to the real world, to a life where you get to choose your own family." The footsteps were almost upon us now. In the red light, I could see tactical officers approaching from both directions. At least 6 men, all armed, all moving with the kind of coordination that suggested extensive training. "Arya," I said desperately. "Come with me." "I can't." Her voice was steady, but I could see tears in her eyes. "Blackthorn owns me in ways you can't understand. Legal ways, financial ways, psychological ways. The only choice I have left is whether to help you escape or deliver you to him." "That's not true. We can figure something out." "We can." "Sebastian." She turned to face me fully, and in that moment she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, not because of her appearance, but because of the courage and love and desperation all warring in her expression. "I need you to know that these last 3 days, being able to talk to you honestly, being able to touch you, being able to pretend for just a moment that I was someone worth loving. They've been the best days of my life. Before I could respond, she kissed me. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like goodbye. Then she pushed me toward the maintenance shaft and stepped into the center of the tunnel, her weapon raised. Aria Blackthorn Torres. A voice called from the darkness. Stand down. Director's orders. Tell the director, she called back, that his daughter hereby resigns. The gunfire was deafening in the enclosed space. I ran toward the shaft as the tunnel erupted in muzzle flashes and ricocheting bullets, my heart breaking with every step. The maintenance shaft was exactly where Torres had said it would be, a narrow opening in the tunnel wall that led upward at a steep angle. As I climbed, I could hear the battle raging below me, but I couldn't tell who was winning. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I emerged from the shaft into the Montana wilderness. The facility sprawled below me, a complex of buildings that looked peaceful from the outside. There were no explosions, no signs of assault, no evidence of the chaos I'd just escaped. It really had been theater. I pulled out the device Torres had given me and pressed the red button with shaking fingers. Sebastian. Sophia's voice came through immediately, tight with worry. Sebastian, are you all right? Mom. The word came out before I could stop it, and hearing myself say it felt like coming home. We're here, son. My father's voice joined the call. We're coming for you. No, I said quickly. Don't come here. It's a trap. Blackthorn has been planning this for. We know. Sophia's voice was fierce. Agent Torres has been keeping us informed. She saved your life tonight, Sebastian. Is she? I couldn't finish the question. We don't know, my father said quietly. But she knew the risks when she chose to help you instead of Blackthorn. I sat down heavily on a fallen log, the weight of everything that had happened crushing down on me. In the space of one day, I'd learned that my mother was alive, that my grandfather was a monster, and that the woman I was falling in love with had just sacrificed herself to save me. What happens now? I asked. Now, Sophia said, we disappear again. All of us. Blackthorn will never stop hunting us, but at least now we'll be together. What about the life I built? My friends, my work, my apartment. I know it's hard, my father said. But Sebastian, that life was built on lies anyway. This is your chance to build something real. Through the device, I could hear vehicles starting, the sound of my parents preparing to run again. There's something else, I said. Agent Torres, Aria, she's Blackthorn's adopted daughter. She said he's been collecting broken people and rebuilding them as operatives. We know, Sophia said quietly. And we know that she chose you over the only family she's ever known. That's not a choice someone makes lightly. We have to help her. Sebastian. My father's voice carried 40 years of hard-earned wisdom. Sometimes the best way to honor someone's sacrifice is to not waste it trying to save them. As I sat in the Montana wilderness, watching the facility where I'd just learned terrible truths about my family, I realized that Aria Torres had given me more than just my freedom. She'd given me the choice to forgive my parents for the lies they'd told me. And for the first time in my life, I understood the difference between family by blood and family by choice. The device crackled with static, then Sophia's voice came through one more time. Sebastian, we love you. We're coming to get you. And this time, we're never going to let anyone separate us again. Looking back at the facility, I wondered if somewhere in those tunnels, Aria Torres was still alive, still fighting, still believing that love was worth dying for. And I realized that whether or not we ever saw each other again, she'd already given me the most precious gift possible, the knowledge that I was worth saving. Even if the cost was everything she'd ever known. The rendezvous point was an abandoned gas station 40 miles from Blackthorn's facility, a skeletal structure of rusted metal and broken glass that had been slowly dying in the Montana wilderness for decades. I'd been waiting for 2 hours, the communication device silent in my hands, when I finally heard the sound of approaching vehicles. 2 motorcycles emerged from the tree line, moving fast and low. The riders were in full gear, helmets, leathers, everything designed to obscure identity and maximize speed. But even before they removed their helmets, I knew it was them. I could feel it in my bones, the way you recognize family even when everything else about them has changed. Sophia pulled off her helmet, and 40 years of careful disguise fell away with it. Her hair was longer than I'd ever seen it, streaked with silver, and her face bore the lines of someone who'd spent decades looking over her shoulder. But her eyes were exactly the same as they'd been when she was making my breakfast every morning. Sebastian. She crossed the distance between us in 3 strides and pulled me into an embrace that felt like coming home and breaking apart at the same time. Mihijo, are you hurt? I'm fine. The words came out muffled against her shoulder. But Arya. We know. My father's voice was rough as he approached. Without his business suits and careful grooming, he looked like what he'd always been under the surface, a soldier who'd been fighting a war for half his life. We monitored the facility's communications. Agent Torres brought you 37 minutes before Blackthorn's people found her. Is she alive? Yes. Sophia stepped back, holding my face in her hands. But Sebastian, she's not the same person you knew. Blackthorn has ways of reconstructing people who disappoint him. The words hit me like ice water. What do you mean? My father pulled out a tactical tablet and showed me a series of surveillance feeds from inside Blackthorn's facility. In one of them, I could see Arya, alive but strapped to what looked like a medical chair, with cables attached to her temples. Psychological reconditioning, he said quietly. Blackthorn's version of a factory reset. By the time he's finished, Agent Torres will remember her mission but not her feelings. She'll remember you as a target, not as someone she loved. I stared at the screen, watching Arya's unconscious form, and felt something break inside my chest. We have to get her out. Sebastian, Sophia began. No. The word came out sharper than I'd intended. I don't care what it costs. I don't care how dangerous it is. We're not leaving her there. It's not that simple. My father closed the tablet. Blackthorn isn't just holding Arya. Show him. Sophia pulled out a second device, this one showing multiple video feeds. In them, I could see faces I recognized. Mrs. Patterson from next door, my college roommate Tyler, my ex-girlfriend Jessica, even the barista from the coffee shop I frequented. All of them were in what looked like holding cells, all of them unaware of where they were or why they'd been taken. 17 people from your life, Sophia said quietly. Blackthorn grabbed them all within 6 hours of your escape. Neighbors, friends, acquaintances, anyone who might matter to you. But why? Because he knows us, my father said. He knows we'll sacrifice anything to keep innocent people safe. It's what we've always done, what we taught you to do. I looked between them, understanding slowly dawning. He's forcing us to choose. Arya Torres, or 17 innocent people who were only guilty of knowing you. Sophia's voice was breaking. We have 3 hours to decide. The abandoned gas station felt like it was closing in around us. 3 hours to choose between the woman I loved and 17 people who'd shown me kindness over the years. 3 hours to decide who lived and who died. There has to be another way, I said desperately. We've run every scenario. My father opened the tablet again, showing me building schematics, security protocols, guard rotations. Blackthorn's facility is impregnable. Getting in would require a full military assault, and even then we'd only be able to save one group before the other was eliminated. What if we contacted the authorities? The FBI, the CIA. Blackthorn has people in every agency that matters. Sophia sat down heavily on a broken concrete barrier. The few honest agents who might help us would be dead before they could act. I started pacing, my mind racing through possibilities. What if we offered Blackthorn what he wants? What if I agreed to join him in exchange for everyone's safety? He'll kill them anyway, my father said flatly. Once you're under his control, the hostages become liabilities. Blackthorn doesn't leave loose ends. So we're supposed to just choose. Decide who lives and who dies. That's what he's counting on. Sophia looked up at me, and I could see 40 years of similar impossible choices etched in the lines around her eyes. Blackthorn understands that good people will destroy themselves before they'll let innocents suffer. The communication device in my hands crackled to life, and Blackthorn's voice filled the silence between us. Sebastian, my boy, I trust you've had time to consider your options. I looked at my parents, both of whom nodded grimly. My father gestured to the device, encouraging me to respond. I'm here, I said. Excellent. I assume Sophia and Julian have explained the terms of our little family negotiation. You're holding innocent people hostage. I'm providing you with an opportunity to demonstrate your values. Blackthorn's voice was calm, conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. You can save Agent Torres, the woman who betrayed her own family for you, or you can save 17 strangers who happened to cross paths with you over the years. There has to be another way. I'm afraid not. You see, Sebastian, this is a lesson your parents never learned. Sometimes leadership requires making choices that destroy part of your soul. Sometimes saving the many means sacrificing the few. Sophia grabbed the device from my hands. James, this isn't about leadership. This is about your sick need to control everyone around you. Sophia. Blackthorn's voice warmed with what sounded like genuine affection. My dear granddaughter, I've missed our conversations. I'm not your granddaughter anymore. I haven't been since you murdered my mother. Catherine chose to disappear into Mexico. I simply made that disappearance permanent when she threatened to expose operations that were keeping America safe. The casual way he discussed murdering his own daughter made my stomach turn. But Sophia's response surprised me. She laughed, bitter and broken. You want to know the real reason Julian and I have been running for 40 years, Sebastian. She looked at me with eyes full of pain. It's not because we're afraid of Blackthorn finding us. It's because we're afraid of what we'll do to him when he does. Sophia, my father warned. No, Julian. He needs to know. Sophia stood, and suddenly she looked less like the woman who'd made my breakfast and more like the daughter of a cartel leader. We've been running because we're not the victims in this story. We're the monsters who chose love over justice. What are you talking about? The photographs Blackthorn showed you weren't fake, Sebastian. We did kill those people. 17 federal agents, 4 civilians, and 6 of Blackthorn's operatives. Sophia's voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. We killed them because they were coming for you. The world tilted sideways. When I was a baby. When you were 3 months old, my father said quietly. Blackthorn had tracked us to a safe house in Colorado. He sent a team to take you and eliminate us. We. He stopped, struggling with the words. We slaughtered them, Sophia finished. All of them. And we've been running ever since, not because we were afraid of Blackthorn's justice, but because we were afraid of our own capacity for violence. I stared at them, these people who'd raised me to be kind and compassionate, trying to reconcile their gentle guidance with the reality of what they'd done. You're telling me you're murderers? We're parents, Sophia said simply. And parents will do anything to protect their children. Blackthorn's voice crackled through the device again. You see, Sebastian, this is the legacy you're choosing between. You can save a trained killer who murdered her way to your heart, or you can save 17 innocents who represent the life you could have had if your parents hadn't turned you into a weapon. I'm not a weapon. Aren't you? You've been trained from birth to make impossible choices, to sacrifice anything for family, to value loyalty over morality. What do you think that makes you? I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and saw the truth written in their faces. Every lesson they'd taught me about helping others, every encouragement to be kind and compassionate, every moment of guidance about doing the right thing, it had all been preparation for this moment. They'd been training me to be exactly like them. The timer starts now, Blackthorn said. 3 hours to choose. Agent Torres, or the innocents. Save one group, and I'll release them unharmed. Try to save both, and everyone dies. The device went silent. Sophia and my father looked at me with expressions I'd never seen before, not the loving parents who'd raised me, but the killers who'd shaped me. And for the first time in my life, I understood that love and violence weren't opposites. They were the same thing, pointed in different directions. What would you do? I asked them. We'd save you, Sophia said without hesitation. We'd always save you, no matter who else had to die. Even if saving me meant becoming monsters. Sebastian, my father said quietly, we became monsters the day you were born. Everything since then has just been trying to be better monsters than the ones hunting us. I sat down on the broken concrete, the weight of 3 hours pressing down on me like a mountain. Somewhere in Blackthorn's facility, Aria Torres was being erased and rebuilt into someone who'd never loved me. Somewhere else, 17 innocent people were waiting to die because they'd been kind to a stranger. And somewhere in between, I had to choose who I was going to become. The woman I loved, or the innocents who'd trusted me. The person who'd chosen to save me, or the people who'd never asked to be part of this war. 3 hours to decide whether love was worth 17 lives. 3 hours to learn whether I was my parents' son or Blackthorn's grandson. 3 hours to discover what kind of monster I was willing to become. In the distance, storm clouds were gathering over the mountains, and I realized that no matter what choice I made, someone I cared about was going to die because of me. The only question was whether I could live with myself afterward. 2 hours and 37 minutes. I'd been staring at the timer on the communication device, watching the seconds tick away like drops of blood. Sophia and my father had given me space to think, positioning themselves as sentries while I sat on the broken concrete and tried to find a solution that didn't exist. Every plan I'd considered led to the same conclusion. People I cared about were going to die because of choices I made. Save Arya, and 17 innocent people would be executed. Save the innocents, and Arya would be erased, rebuilt into a weapon pointed at my heart. Try to save both, and Blackthorn would kill everyone out of spite. There has to be something we're missing, I said aloud, more to break the silence than because I believed it. Sophia looked up from the tactical tablet she'd been studying. We've been over it 100 times, Sebastian. Blackthorn chose this scenario specifically because there's no good answer. What if we're thinking about this wrong? I stood up, pacing again. What if the choice isn't really about who lives and who dies? What do you mean? My father asked. Blackthorn said this was a lesson about leadership, about making choices that destroy part of your soul. I stopped pacing, something clicking into place. But what if the real lesson is that some choices shouldn't be made at all? Sophia and my father exchanged a look I didn't understand. Sebastian, Sophia said carefully, sometimes there really are no other options. There are always other options. You taught me that. I looked between them, seeing something in their expressions that made my stomach clench. You did teach me that, right? The silence stretched too long. What aren't you telling me? I asked. My father closed his eyes, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Show him. Sophia pulled out another device, one I hadn't seen before. The screen showed a feed from inside Blackthorn's facility, but not the holding cells or Arya's reconditioning chamber. This was Blackthorn's office, and he wasn't alone. Arya Torres sat across from his desk, completely unrestrained, wearing civilian clothes and looking perfectly healthy. As I watched, Blackthorn poured her a cup of coffee, and she accepted it with a smile. That's impossible, I whispered. She's supposed to be unconscious, being reconditioned. The feed you saw earlier was pre-recorded, Sophia said quietly. Agent Torres was never captured, never in danger. She's exactly where she's always been, working for Blackthorn. The device slipped from my nerveless fingers. No, she saved me. She helped me escape. She guided you to exactly where Blackthorn wanted you to go. My father's voice was gentle but implacable. Sebastian, the escape, the tunnel, the conversation where she confessed her feelings, it was all scripted. I felt like I was drowning in solid ground. But she kissed me. She told me she loved me. And she probably did. Sophia picked up the device, showing me more surveillance footage, hours of it, showing Arya in debriefing sessions with Blackthorn, discussing my psychological profile, my reactions, my vulnerabilities. Blackthorn's most effective operatives are the ones who believe their own covers. Agent Torres was told to get close to you, to make you trust her. The fact that she developed real feelings just made her performance more convincing. So everything she said was a lie. Not everything. My father knelt beside me as my legs gave out. The emotions were real, Sebastian. But the situation was manufactured. I stared at the screen, watching Arya laugh at something Blackthorn said, and felt something die inside my chest. How long have you known? Since the beginning. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. We've been monitoring Blackthorn's communications for months. We knew about Operation Family Reunion, about Agent Torres's assignment, about the fake rescue scenario. Then why did you let me go through it? Why did you let me fall in love with her? Because we needed Blackthorn to believe his plan was working. My father's hands were shaking. And because we needed you to understand what you're really fighting for. Which is the right to choose your own life. Sophia sat down beside me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked like the woman who'd raised me. Blackthorn's greatest weapon isn't his resources or his operatives. It's his ability to make people believe they don't have choices. I looked between them, understanding slowly dawning. The 17 hostages aren't real either. Oh, they are real. But they are not innocent. My father pulled up another screen, showing detailed dossiers on each of the people I'd recognized. Mrs. Patterson, former CIA assassin, retired but still on Blackthorn's payroll. Your college roommate Tyler has been reporting on you since freshman year. Jessica, she broke up with you because Blackthorn ordered her to create emotional distance. Every relationship I'd thought was genuine, every connection I'd believed was real, had been a lie. How many? I asked. All of them. Sophia's voice broke. Every friend, every girlfriend, every mentor outside of this family. Blackthorn placed them in your life to monitor you, to shape you, to make sure you became exactly what he needed. The abandoned gas station felt like it was spinning around me. So the choice isn't between Arya and 17 innocents. It's between accepting that your entire life has been a performance, or choosing to write your own ending. My father pulled out a weapon I'd never seen him carry before. Blackthorn is expecting you to choose between two groups of his operatives. What he's not expecting is for you to refuse to play the game entirely. I stared at the gun, understanding what he was suggesting. You want me to kill myself. We want you to choose freedom. Sophia's eyes were filled with tears. Real freedom, not the illusion Blackthorn has been selling you your whole life. And what about you? What about our family? Sebastian, my father said gently, we were never going to survive this. We've been dying by inches for 40 years, living as ghosts of who we used to be. But you could still choose to be real. The communication device crackled to life again. Blackthorn's voice filled the silence, warm and paternal. Time's up, Sebastian. What's your choice? I looked at my parents, the people who'd loved me enough to destroy their own lives, who'd spent decades running from a man who'd shaped my entire existence without me knowing it. Then I looked at the device showing Arya Torres, laughing with the man who'd orchestrated everything I'd ever felt. I choose neither, I said into the device. I'm sorry. Blackthorn's voice carried a note of confusion. I choose neither Arya nor the hostages. I choose to stop playing your game entirely. Sebastian, I don't think you understand the consequences. I understand perfectly. I stood up, feeling something settle into place in my chest, not peace, but clarity. You've spent 26 years trying to turn me into you, making me believe I had to choose between terrible options, that leadership meant making choices that destroy your soul. Because that's what leadership is. No. I looked at Sophia and my father, seeing them clearly for the first time. That's what fear is. And I'm not afraid of you anymore. Sebastian. I crushed the communication device under my heel. What now? Sophia asked. Now we stop running. I picked up my father's weapon, surprised by how natural it felt in my hands. Blackthorn wants a family reunion? Let's give him one. Sebastian, you don't understand what you're suggesting. I understand exactly what I'm suggesting. I looked between them, these people who'd shaped me with love and lies in equal measure. Blackthorn's greatest weakness is that he thinks everyone can be controlled. But you can't control someone who's already decided they have nothing left to lose. And what exactly do you have left to lose? I smiled, and for the first time in days, the expression felt genuine. Everything. Which is exactly what makes me dangerous. In the distance, storm clouds were finally breaking over the mountains, and I realized that the hardest choice wasn't between love and innocence. It was between the safety of lies and the danger of truth. And I'd have just chosen the truth, no matter what it cost. The drive back to Blackthorn's facility took 38 minutes through winding mountain roads slick with rain from the breaking storm. Sophia rode ahead on her motorcycle, scouting the route, while my father and I followed in a stolen pickup truck loaded with enough explosives to level a city block. You understand this is suicide, my father said as we navigated a particularly treacherous curve. Maybe. I checked the detonator in my hands, a simple device with a single red button that would end Blackthorn's 40-year game permanently. But it's our choice to make. And if we're wrong, if there really are innocent people in that facility. I thought about Mrs. Patterson, about Adrian, about Jessica, and all the others who'd supposedly been part of my life. Then they made their choice when they decided to work for a monster. My father was quiet for several miles. Then, I need to tell you something, Sebastian. Something Sophia doesn't know. What? Blackthorn didn't just place operatives in your life. He placed them in mine too. My father's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The night I met your mother, it wasn't random. I was directed to that specific club, given that specific assignment, told to target that specific woman. You're saying Blackthorn orchestrated your relationship with Sophia. I'm saying Blackthorn has been playing a game 40 years longer than we realized. My father's voice was heavy with realization. What if everything we think we know about our escape, our life in hiding, our love story, what if it was all part of his plan? Before I could respond, Sophia's voice crackled through our communication system. Stop the truck. We pulled over at an overlook that gave us a clear view of Blackthorn's facility spread out in the valley below. Sophia was waiting for us, her helmet off, her expression unreadable in the growing darkness. There's something you both need to see, she said, handing us a pair of binoculars. Through the lenses, I could make out movement around the facility's perimeter. Not security guards, vehicles. Dozens of them, arranged in precise formations around every entrance and exit. Military? I asked. Federal agents, Sophia said quietly. FBI, DEA, ATF, and agencies that don't have public acronyms. Blackthorn's calling in every favor he's ever accumulated. How many? 200 operators, minimum. Plus helicopter support, satellite surveillance, and enough firepower to stop a small army. Sophia took the binoculars back. Sebastian, there's no way into that facility. Not anymore. I stared down at the fortress that had become Blackthorn's final stronghold, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. He knew we were coming. He's known everything we were going to do since before we did it, my father said grimly. The question is how. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the facility below. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. Because I told him. The world stopped. What? I turned to stare at her, certain I'd misheard. I've been in contact with Blackthorn for 3 months, Sebastian. Feeding him information, coordinating movements, helping him position his pieces exactly where he needed them. Sophia's voice was steady, but I could see tears streaming down her face. Everything that's happened, your discovery of the truth, the confrontation with Blackthorn, Aria Torres's involvement, even this moment right now, I planned it all. My father stepped backward as if she'd struck him. Sophia, what are you saying? I'm saying that Blackthorn isn't the mastermind here. He never was. She pulled out a device I'd never seen before, something that looked like a modified satellite phone. Julian, do you remember what I told you the night we escaped Blackthorn's people 40 years ago? When we were hiding in that abandoned warehouse with our 3-month-old son. You said you'd do anything to protect our family. I said I'd sacrifice anyone to protect our family. Sophia's smile was heartbreaking. Including myself. Including you. Including the illusion that we were good people who deserved a happy ending. She pressed a button on the device, and suddenly the facility below us lit up like a Christmas tree. Every window, every door, every vehicle in the federal perimeter, they all exploded simultaneously in a display of coordinated destruction that turned night into day. The sound reached us 30 seconds later, a rolling thunder that shook the ground beneath our feet. Jesus Christ, my father whispered. Sophia, what have you done? I've been spending 3 months convincing Blackthorn that he was hunting us, when actually I was hunting him. Sophia's voice was getting stronger, more authoritative, and I realized I was finally seeing the real her, not the grieving mother or the hidden housekeeper, but Sofia Vasquez, daughter of a cartel leader, trained from birth to think 10 moves ahead of her enemies. Every agent he brought in, every operative he positioned, every piece of his network, I made sure they were all in the same place at the same time. You killed 200 federal agents, I said, horrified. I killed 200 of Blackthorn's private army. Sophia turned to face me fully, and her expression was fierce with 40 years of suppressed fury. Sebastian, there hasn't been an honest federal agent in Blackthorn's employ for 20 years. Every person in that facility was either a killer, a torturer, or someone who enabled both. The facility below us was now a collection of burning ruins, but Sophia wasn't finished. She pulled out another device, this one looking like a tablet computer, and showed us a satellite view of locations across the country. Government buildings, private estates, corporate headquarters, all of them blinking with red dots. Blackthorn's network spans 40 states and includes assets in every major city, she said quietly. Safe houses, weapons depots, recruitment centers, assassination teams. For 3 months, I've been mapping every location, every operative, every connection. Sophia, my father said urgently. What are you planning? Instead of answering, she looked at me. Sebastian, do you remember what I taught you about weeds when you were 8 years old? I thought back, confused by the apparent non sequitur. You said you can't just cut them back. You have to kill the roots, or they'll grow back stronger. Blackthorn isn't just the root, Amor. He's part of a system that creates men like him. Corrupt officials who sell their authority, agencies that operate without oversight, politicians who profit from other people's suffering. Sophia's finger hovered over the tablet. This device is connected to explosive charges I've been placing for 3 months. Every safe house, every depot, every facility where Blackthorn's people gather. You're talking about destroying half the shadow government. I'm talking about cutting out a cancer that's been growing in this country for 50 years. Sophia looked between my father and me. But I can't make this choice alone. It affects all of us. The tablet showed a timer, 5 minutes and counting down. 5 minutes, my father said. 5 minutes for Blackthorn's people in those facilities to evacuate, if they choose to. 5 minutes for us to decide whether we're going to be the people who ended this, or the people who let it continue. Sophia's voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. 5 minutes to choose between justice and mercy. I stared at the device, understanding the magnitude of what she was proposing. Dozens of facilities, hundreds of operatives, an entire network of corruption and violence. All of it could be ended with the press of a button. What about Aria? I asked. Aria Torres died in that facility 20 minutes ago, Sophia said quietly. The woman who loved you, the woman who chose you over her mission, she's gone. What's left is the operative Blackthorn rebuilt her to be. As if summoned by her words, a figure emerged from the burning wreckage below us. Even at this distance, even through smoke and flames, I could see it was Aria. She was moving with mechanical precision, unaffected by the destruction around her, heading toward a helicopter that had somehow survived the explosions. She's not trying to escape, my father observed. She's heading toward us. Sophia nodded grimly. Blackthorn's final gambit. Even in death, he's programmed her to complete one last mission. Which is, kill the 3 people who destroyed his life's work. The helicopter was lifting off now, its searchlight cutting through the smoke as it began climbing toward our position. We had maybe 3 minutes before Aria Torres, or whatever Blackthorn had turned her into, reached us. The timer, I said, looking at the tablet. Can you stop it? Not stop it, but I can choose whether to let it run out or trigger it early. Sophia met my eyes. Sebastian, this is the choice Blackthorn always wanted you to make. Not between Aria and innocence, not between love and duty, but between the person you are and the person you need to become. And what person do I need to become? The kind who can live with the weight of justice. The kind who can make the hard choices so that future generations won't have to. Sophia held out the tablet. The kind who can press a button that will save thousands of lives by ending hundreds. Below us, the helicopter was gaining altitude fast. Aria Torres was coming to kill us, programmed with 40 years of Blackthorn's hatred and the skills to make good on it. In my hands, the tablet showed 2 minutes and 47 seconds and falling. Across the country, dozens of facilities full of Blackthorn's operatives waited unknowingly for destruction. And somewhere in the space between justice and mercy, I had to choose who I wanted to be. The boy who'd grown up believing in happy endings, or the man who understood that sometimes happy endings had to be built on the bones of terrible choices. Sophia, I said quietly, did you ever really love my father? Was any of it real? All of it was real, Sebastian. The love, the pain, the sacrifice, it was all real. She reached out to touch my face. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to become a monster to protect the people you love from bigger monsters. The timer read 1 minute and 30 seconds. Aria's helicopter was close enough now that I could see her face through the windscreen, beautiful, deadly, and completely empty of the woman who'd kissed me in Blackthorn's tunnels. Together, Sophia asked, her hand covering mine on the tablet. I looked at my father, who nodded grimly. Then at Sophia, who'd spent 40 years planning this moment. Then at the timer, 45 seconds. Together, I said, and pressed the button that would end Blackthorn's world forever. The explosions across the country began 37 seconds after I pressed the button. We watched them through Sophia's tablet. Simultaneous detonations in 43 cities, each one marking the end of a piece of Blackthorn's network. Safe houses in Chicago, weapons depots in Nevada, recruitment centers in Florida. 40 years of carefully constructed corruption erased in coordinated fire and smoke. But we couldn't watch for long. Aria's helicopter crested the ridge, its searchlight cutting through the smoke and rain to pin us in white-hot illumination. Through the windscreen, I could see her face, beautiful, emotionless, and focused with mechanical precision on our destruction. She's armed, my father said, raising his weapon toward the aircraft. Don't. Sophia pushed his gun down. She's not our enemy anymore. She's Blackthorn's final victim. The helicopter hovered 50 feet above us, close enough that I could see Aria's finger on the trigger of what looked like a military-grade assault rifle. But she wasn't firing. She was staring down at us with an expression I'd never seen before, not the warm affection I'd fallen in love with, not the cold professionalism of Blackthorn's operative, but something caught between the two. Aria! I shouted over the rotor noise, stepping into the searchlight's beam. I know you're still in there. No response. The rifle tracked my movement with mechanical precision. She can't hear you, Sophia said quietly. Blackthorn's conditioning creates perfect soldiers by destroying everything that makes them human. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not on the woman who'd risked everything to save me, even if she couldn't remember doing it. Aria Torres. I called again. Do you remember what you told me in Blackthorn's tunnel? You said you'd been watching me for 3 years, making sure I was safe. The rifle wavered slightly. You said watching me became more than just an assignment. You said I was everything Blackthorn claimed was weak about modern society, and that watching me proved him wrong. The helicopter dropped lower, close enough now that I could see tears streaming down Aria's face. The rifle was shaking in her hands. Sebastian, my father warned. Even if she remembers, the conditioning. You told me you fell in love with the idea that people could be good without being broken first. I was screaming now, pouring every ounce of emotion into my voice. You kissed me and said those 3 days of being honest with me were the best days of your life. The rifle clattered to the helicopter's floor. Aria was staring down at me with an expression of such pure anguish that it broke my heart all over again. But the helicopter kept hovering. The searchlight stayed locked on us. And I realized that remembering and being free weren't the same thing. She's fighting the conditioning, Sophia observed. But Blackthorn built failsafes. Even if she remembers who she was, she can't disobey her final orders. What were her final orders? To eliminate the 3 people who destroyed Blackthorn's network. To make sure his death was avenged, even if it cost her own life. I looked up at Aria, at the woman caught between love and programming, and understood what I had to do. Sophia, I said quietly, give me your sidearm. Sebastian. She can't disobey her orders to kill us, but she might be able to follow in order to protect me. I held out my hand. If I'm pointing a gun at my own head, and she thinks you're about to kill me. Sophia understood immediately. She handed me her weapon, and I raised it to my temple, my finger on the trigger. Aria. I called up to the helicopter. Blackthorn's people are going to kill me. You have to protect the asset. The helicopter jerked as if Aria had wrestled control from autopilot. For a moment, it seemed like she might crash into the mountainside. Then it stabilized, and I could see her struggling with conflicting directives. Eliminate the targets. Protect Sebastian Blackwood. It's working, my father said. She's fighting both sets of programming. But the strain was visible on Aria's face. Blood was trickling from her nose, and her hands were shaking as competing neural pathways warred for control of her actions. Sebastian, Sophia said urgently. She's going to have a cerebral hemorrhage. Blackthorn's conditioning isn't designed to handle conflicting priorities. I made a choice that felt like stepping off a cliff. Aria! I screamed. I love you. I choose you. Forget the orders. Forget Blackthorn. Forget everything except this. I love you and I choose you. For one perfect moment, Aria's face cleared. The mechanical precision fell away, the conditioning cracked, and I saw the woman who'd kissed me in Blackthorn's tunnels. She was smiling through her tears, and her lips moved in words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. I love you too. Then the helicopter exploded. The blast knocked us flat, and by the time I could see again through the ringing in my ears, burning wreckage was scattered across the mountainside. I ran toward the crash site, desperate to find survivors, but Sophia caught my arm. She's gone, Sebastian. You don't know that. Maybe she ejected, maybe. She chose to overload the helicopter's engine rather than carry out Blackthorn's final order. Sophia's voice was gentle but implacable. She chose love over programming, even knowing it would kill her. I stood there in the rain, staring at the wreckage of the woman I'd loved, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The boy who'd walked into his family library expecting to confront his father about an affair was gone forever. In his place stood someone who understood that love sometimes meant making choices that destroyed you. Is it over? I asked. Sophia pulled out her tablet, showing feeds from news stations across the country. The coordinated explosions were being reported as terrorist attacks, but the facilities being destroyed were already being exposed by whistleblowers and journalists who'd apparently been waiting for exactly this moment. Blackthorn's network is finished, she said. The evidence we've been collecting for 40 years is already being released to every major news outlet, every congressional oversight committee, every international tribunal that can hold corrupt officials accountable. And us. Sofia Vasquez, Julian Blake, and Sebastian Blackwood are all officially dead as of tonight. My father put his arm around my shoulders. But the Blackthorn family, James, Catherine, and their grandson, they have a chance to build something better. I looked between them, these people who'd loved me enough to become monsters, who'd sacrificed their identities and their souls to give me a choice they'd never had. What do we build? A life, Sophia said simply. A real one, where we get to choose who we love and who we trust. Where we get to make mistakes that are our own instead of following scripts written by people who see us as weapons. A year later, I stood in a small cafe in Portland, Oregon, watching through the window as children played in the park across the street. My name was Sebastian Blackthorn now, and I worked as a counselor for young people aging out of the foster system. Kids who'd been broken by circumstances beyond their control and needed someone to help them rebuild. Sophia, who now went by Catherine, honoring the grandmother she'd never known, ran a nonprofit that helped victims of government corruption find justice. My father had taken the name James Blake and worked as a legal advocate for whistleblowers and asylum seekers. We were a family built on the bones of the family we'd destroyed. We were good people who'd done terrible things for love. We were free. But sometimes, late at night, I still dreamed of Aria Torres. In my dreams, she was always falling from that helicopter, always choosing love over survival, always proving that even the most broken people could find something worth dying for. And I'd wake up understanding that freedom wasn't the absence of consequences. It was the ability to choose your consequences, to decide what you were willing to sacrifice and what you were willing to become. Blackthorn had spent 40 years trying to teach me that leadership meant making choices that destroy your soul. But Aria had taught me something different in those final seconds before she died. That the choices that matter most are the ones that expand your soul, even if they cost you everything else. The boy who'd found his father crying in the maid's arms would have called that tragedy. The man I'd become called it love. What did this story teach you about the difference between family by blood and family by choice? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.